Is Amazon now culture sabotaging your training? What I find is that there's so many people that just want immediate results and immediate outcomes, and they don't put the time and effort in to the long term. We've been conditioned to believe that we can get these quick outcomes and that things just come easy. When we're investing, for example, a lot of people will say, they've got this, get rich quick scheme, or they've got a plug on the latest stock until they seem to know what things are going on behind the scenes. You've got people on internet and Instagram, telling you what to invest in now, and YouTube, people out there telling you, this stock is hot and that stock is hot. And really, they don't know anything about it. They're simply out there grifting and getting you to make decisions that are quite risky. A lot of these sorts of things happen in all aspects of our life, whether that be in fitness, in health, or whether that be in our finances, or whatever the case may be. A lot of people are going to sell you on something that is quick and allegedly easy, and in the end, it leads to so many different pitfalls. At nearly 50 years old, I can tell you that I've been through just about every diet plan. I've done just about every form of training. And really, at the end of the day, I tell people the same thing every time. Do something that you can stick with over the long run. If it comes to diet, it has to be something that you can manage and you can do over the long term. If it's not going to be something you can do over the long term, then you're going to just fall off. So a lot of these extreme, choices, extreme diets that do different things or help you lose a few pounds quickly, oftentimes you end up just yo-yoing right back to where you came from. And anybody who tells you that they can quickly increase your bench press, or you can, get out of pain quickly with this one exercise, they're simply lying. The fact of the matter is there's no one size fits all. And when it comes to longevity, when it comes to health, when it comes to pain, when it comes to your economics, the same principles apply across the board. We can either have a high time preference or a low time preference. And in a high time preference, we want something very quickly. In a low time preference, we tend to take the long game and the long approach. And in those two separate ways of thinking about things, we make either rational or irrational decisions. And oftentimes, when it comes to having a high time preference, we're usually desperate. We're usually trying anything and everything. And oftentimes, we run into issues surrounding the risks we're taking for the rewards that we want. I'm old enough to remember when Captain Kirk was the only person to have a smart device, and he could call to his ship and do all those sorts of things, like with this smart device handheld. And at that time, there was no way in the world I could even conceive of the fact that we'd one day have smartphones and we'd be able to do virtually anything on that smartphone. Yet here we are. We've gone from emails to text messaging. We've gone from the expectations of waiting for someone to receive our letter before taking an opportunity to sit down and write a response, to receiving that letter, or to sending that letter and now receiving it on my end, and then exchanging back and forth. We've gone from literally waiting for days to receive, for our letter to even arrive at the person before it came back in response. So sometimes that could be weeks. And yet here we are, we've gone from emails where you get an instant message that goes from one person's inbox to the other, and you had to wait for them to actually check their email. To now the expectation is like, if I sent you an email, you should have received it and sent it back to me immediately at work. Matter of fact, I'm going to send you a text message now because I expect you to just pick up your handheld device, or expect you to look at your watch as soon as it comes in. I expect your notifications to be on. So I expect an immediate response. We've gone from this world of patience this world of being able to wait, to be able to take the time to sit down and actually write something thoughtful, erase, come back and rewrite and say, you know what, no, that's not, to like, boom, 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 boom. Let me send that text out. And, before you know it, it's on its way and it's gone without any revision. When I was in college, I used to set my computer to download music. And I remember having to wait overnight for one song to download. I remember, at times when we used, what was it called, Napster, and we would download music files and it would take hours, if not a whole 24 hours, just to get a couple of songs. And then over time, the speed of the internet increased and we could download multiple songs or a whole album within a short period of time. And then they shut that down, moved that inside of companies like Spotify and Apple, and then it just became a streaming service where they can now charge you for the stream of the music and you don't even actually have or own the music at all. So, we've come such a long way as far as like our ability to be patient. You had to go actually to the store. Tower Records was a big record shop, and Tower Records, you had to go to Tower Records, get your CD, buy it, bring it home, unwrap it, put it inside the CD player and play the music. You had to be patient. You had to wait the process. So now with everything being so instant, a drop of an album happens, and before you even wake up in the morning, people have already produced content. And here we are, the Amazon now culture. We've just been completely conditioned to get everything now. It's been very detrimental for the field of health and fitness, because in the field of health and fitness, you know as a coach and as a trainer that the body takes time, adaptation takes time, muscle in order to grow takes time under tension. We know that many people don't spend enough time doing eccentrics and isometrics, which prioritize time under tension. Eccentrics especially. And eccentrics are one of the biggest bang for your buck as far as gaining more muscle and gaining more strength. It's that time that you spend under tension, moving to length, that improves muscle and connective tissue. Then not only that time under tension matters, but it's the total cumulative time. So it's the accumulation of time under tension over multiple days and weeks and months. It's that total time over the course of time that gives you the building blocks. Sometimes you have to do things repetitively over the course of weeks in order to get the adaptations you want. But so many people think that like, if I did, X amount of squats this week, and then next week, I did X, a few reps here and there, or maybe I skipped a week, and there's no consistency, there's no cumulative effect if you're doing just a bunch of random stuff. So sometimes you have to do that repetitive input to get that tissue, to speak to that tissue over and over again. It's like learning a language, or it's like becoming better at, if you want to become better at anything, you have to practice it. You have to do it repetitively. With language, you have to spend the time learning the language. You have to spend the time with the language. All the muscles of your mouth are trying to figure out how to create these new sounds and how to do these new things. And it's connecting with your brain. And you're repeating these over and over again. This is the same process with the rest of your body. It's muscle memory. It's committing to creating the time and spending the time under tension. When it comes to losing weight, so many people are so quick to say, you know what, I'm throwing in the towel because I tried this one thing and it's not changing. But once again, it's the total time you spend with the dietary change. And it's the total time you spend with the exercise change. Those two things have to be done over the course of time. The one thing that I try to get across to people oftentimes is, because I'm a person who has been deeply rooted in science and spent lots of years within the field of science. My degree is in science. what I often try to get across to people is the understanding that if you only did high school science, you probably threw out most of the thoughts surrounding that once you finished high school. But one of the fundamental aspects of science is setting a control and then running the experiment. I understand most teachers did not do a very good job of showing us how these things related to our lives. But if you're trying to change something, or if you're trying to create a change, you have to start with a base control. And you have to say, okay, I'm going to make this change. And when I make this change, I need to give it time to create the outcome. And if it's not creating the outcome that I want, then I have to modify. But I still have that control, that starting point. That's our point A. If you don't have a point A, or you haven't established a point A, then you have no idea where you're going. And if you don't have a control, if you don't have a base of control, and you don't stick to something for long enough, you cannot know whether that thing is actually working or not, because it doesn't just happen overnight. We're in a state of inertia, another science term that our teachers didn't do a good job of explaining how it relates to our life. But an object at rest tends to stay at rest unless a force can overcome that inertia, that desire for it to stay at rest. And with our bodies are stay in this homeostasis. It gets comfortable being in a certain state of being. And overcoming or pushing our body outside of that comfort space takes a lot of energy and force and effort. And that energy and force and effort comes from whatever the dietary change is and whatever the activity change is. And your body is resisting that for a period of time. But you've got to keep pushing and pushing and pushing. And as you keep pushing, slowly it begins to move. And as that slowly begins to move and it slowly begins to creep, then the momentum starts. And that's when the magic starts to happen, and you begin to push, and it becomes a little bit easier and easier over time. But oftentimes we don't give ourselves enough time with the things that we're doing in order to create the change, in order to break through and push that homeostasis and push out of that inertial, space that we're stuck in. So to change, it takes the total time you're spending in that dietary change. It takes the total time that you're spending and giving to that, activity and exercise change. It takes a commitment to increasing and improving your sleep. It takes a decrease in the stresses over time. All of these factors have to come into play to create the environment that you want to create the change that you want to see. The emphasis on longevity is important because it prioritizes, as I said before, the low time preference versus the high time preference. And in a low time preference, we have the ability to avoid potential pitfalls and be derailed easily because we know that we're looking for a long-term change. We're not looking for a quick, high yield return. Sometimes high risk will give you high reward, but oftentimes high risk will give you a high loss. When you prioritize more sustainable practices, that gives you gains over the long term. So prioritize sustainable practices, and remember, all of these things with regards to your health is a practice. And the key thing about practice is not perfect. Practice is exactly that. You're learning, you're constantly learning, you're growing, you're adapting, you're changing, and you're just trying to get better one day at a time. I hope this video was helpful. Remember to click like, share, and subscribe. I'm out.